It had been 1,000 years since the last war ended, and space had grown quiet. Not the soft, comforting quiet of peace, but the thick, uneasy quiet of a room that had held a screen too long. Humanity had outgrown its home world, then outgrown its star, then its solar system, and still, it had not found anyone else willing to speak. They called it the long silence. But all silence ends. On the edge of a quiet nebula, aboard an aging colonial satellite called Eidolon, a technician named Mara performed her night shift ritual. Coffee, silence, and the humming music of dark matter sensors. That was when the alert sounded. Not loud, a soft, polite ping like a friend tapping a shoulder. But it wasn't friendly. An object had exited slip space too close to the station, violating every treaty, every silent understanding. It didn't match any known profile. No drift, no energy bleed, no communication. It just sat there, blacker than the void, like a scar in space. Then it moved. One flicker, and the entire gravitational grid of Eidolon spasmed. Lights flickered. Gravity warped. Mara screamed without knowing why. It was as if her atoms remembered fear. Then came the message. Not in words, not in any human language. It appeared directly on her neural HUD, burning like a tattoo behind her eyes. It showed a shape spiny, angular, utterly wrong, and a sequence of symbols that no translation software could parse. Her implants tried and failed. She tore the HUD off, panting, nose bleeding. When she looked again, the message had changed. It said, "We have returned. The peace is broken. Prepare." Eidolon's emergency beacon engaged automatically, broadcasting a distress signal across human territory, but nothing answered. No reinforcements came, and still the alien craft remained, pulsing like a dark heart outside her window. It hadn't fired. It hadn't spoken again. It simply watched. Hours passed. Then a soft ping from the outer deck sensors. Mara ran diagnostics, trembling. Something had docked. No airlocks opened, no gravity bridge was established. But it was here. Something had stepped aboard. Security drones swarmed to the corridor. Mara watched them on the feed. One by one, they powered down and collapsed, as if forgetting what they were. The feed cut to static. And then footsteps. She should have fled. Should have launched the escape pod. But curiosity, damned human curiosity, nailed her to the floor. So she waited, heart pounding, breath shallow, ears straining, until the thing turned the corner and stepped into the observation deck. It was tall, not monstrous, not grotesque. Tall, silent, and wearing something like armor made of obsidian plates. It moved as if underwater, slow and deliberate. But it didn't look at her, not directly. Its face or mask had no features, just mirrored curves that shimmered with cold starlight. It raised one clawed hand and extended something, a box. Or was it a cube? She blinked, and it shifted. Not in shape, but in meaning. Her head hurt trying to focus. It glowed softly, with the same strange pulse as the ship. And though the creature said nothing, Mara understood. It was offering it to her. No weapon drawn. No command barked. Just a silent gift in the middle of the long silence's graveyard. She didn't take. It couldn't. Her hands trembled too violently. The creature waited. She stared at the thing, not knowing if it was an ambassador, a soldier, or something else. But behind that blank faceplate, she felt not hostility, not even dominance, but something stranger. Sadness. The creature tilted its head, ever so slightly, as if it too didn't know how this meeting was supposed to go. Like it hadn't expected a person, just a system, just protocols and defenses and guns. Instead, it had found a girl with coffee breath and a history degree who still cried at old Earth movies. Then, suddenly, the cube blinked once, brightly, and vanished. The being didn't flinch. It simply turned and walked back the way it came. Mara stood there, frozen, until the internal sensors screamed a new warning. Slip space surge. Multiple contacts. Hundreds. She fell into the chair as her HUD flared again. Now there were words. Human words, translated poorly, scrawled across her field of view with urgency and rage. You laughed at our silence. You thought peace was forever. We come not for conquest. We come for judgment. And somewhere, out beyond the dying light of stars, humanity would laugh again, not from arrogance, not from dismissal, but from something deeper. Because they knew what the aliens had forgotten. Peace was not a gift. It was a choice, and humans had always chosen. At last. The silence on Eidolon thickened like a bruise, and Mara could hardly breathe beneath its weight. Her skin prickled with cold sweat, her heart thundering a rhythm that had nothing to do with logic or procedure. She was alone now. The message from the alien ship still hovered in her peripheral HUD, echoing like a scream caught in glass. We come not for conquest, we come for judgment. But what did that mean? Judgment for what? For surviving? For thriving while the galaxy remained hushed and empty? Her hands clenched the sides of the console until her knuckles turned pale. She tried to send a relay to Central Command again, but the system only returned static and fragments of old transmissions, as if space itself was rejecting her signal. Then, the door behind her hissed open. Mara spun in her chair, expecting to see the alien again, perhaps with weapons raised or judgment in hand. But it was a drone one of the security units. Not powered down, not collapsed like the others. This one was walking strangely, awkwardly, like it didn't remember how its limbs worked. Its voice module crackled, not machine code, not orders. Words. Do not fear. We are learning you. Mara swallowed, backing away. You took the drone? The figure paused, its joints jerking with unnatural grace. We borrowed its function. We seek connection, but your mind is closed. You react with fear. How else am I supposed to react? She said, voice shaking. You appear out of nowhere, hijack my systems, march onto my station like ghosts, and speak in riddles. You say you come for judgment. Do you expect a worm? Welcome? The drone lowered itself into a crouch, not threateningly, but with a strange attempt at humility. We remember the fire. We remember the screaming sons. You were not there, but you are their children. We have waited. We needed to see if you were still as they were. She blinked, confused. Still what? Violent? Hungry? The word echoed, not just through the chamber, but in her bones. Hungry. For power, for territory, for dominance. The old stories from Earth told of wars fought for flags and gods and ideas. But the wars that shattered the star's toes had been for something colder. You think we're like the ones who came before? Mara whispered, but we've changed. Many claim this, few prove it. The drone flickered, its head tilted, mimicking human curiosity. When our envoys left, they carried warnings. When peace was declared, it was not trust, it was fear. Your kind walked away from the war, but did not bury its teeth. We have watched your rise, watched your kind remake the dust into cities. Your silence has been unclear. We didn't even know you were out there, Mara said, half defensive, half in awe. We thought we were alone. We feared that no one else survived the fires. Some survived, but survival is not peace. And silence is not forgiveness. That struck deep. Mara found herself sitting down, more gently this time, as if gravity had become too heavy. Her eyes drifted to the stars outside the window. Distant, cold pinpricks that once held meaning, now witnesses to this quiet confrontation. I'm not a diplomat, she said. Hell, I'm not even military. I'm just a technician who monitors gravitational signatures and drinks too much. Coffee. Why are you speaking to me? The drone's flickering eyes dimmed. Because you did not run, Mara exhaled. A breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't bravery that kept her rooted. It was confusion, stubbornness, maybe a touch of madness. But still she had stayed. I don't have answers, she admitted. But if you really want to judge us, don't look at our wars. Look at what came after. Look at how we built hospitals on craters. How we sent seed ships instead of missiles. We still make mistakes. God, we make so many, but we're trying. The drone stilled completely. Then the voice returned, softer, less fractured. This is what we could not predict. This is not in the data. A long pause stretched between them, stretching across 1,000 years of silence. More will come, the drone said at last. Some are not here to listen, some seek the comfort of ending. They believe the peace was a lie. You must prepare them or show them otherwise. The message wasn't a threat, it was a request. A warning. A burden passed not to generals or philosophers, but to one woman sitting alone on a dying station. I'll try, she said, tears prickling her eyes. But I don't know if they'll listen. The drone stood. Then show them. Not with power, with truth. And as it turned and walked back through the corridor, Mara felt something stir in her chest. Not fear, not defiance, but something very human. Hope. The days passed slowly, or maybe they didn't pass at all. Time had lost meaning aboard Eidolon since the aliens' arrival. No one came to relieve Mara from her post. No messages returned from Earth Command, nor from the orbital relay stations that once buzzed with life. Even her old Earthbound social streams had gone silent, like someone had unplugged the very soul of civilization. But she wasn't entirely alone. The drone remained. Not always visible, not always moving, but always there. Sometimes it would follow her quietly through the station's hallways, its movements more fluid now, more practiced. Other times, it simply stood by the window, watching the stars with that same unknowable stillness as if remembering them. They began speaking, at first out of necessity. Mara needed updates on what the alien ships were doing. She needed to know what would happen next. The drone or the being inside it replied only in short, cryptic phrases, but even that thin thread became something more. Soon, Mara found herself talking even when she didn't expect an answer. She spoke about her brother, who died of cancer on the Mars colonies. About the old Earth oceans, the way they smelled before the air scrubbers made everything sterile. About the loneliness of deep space duty, the boredom, the way the silence could crush a person from the inside out. And the alien listened, not always with words, but with a quiet patience that reminded her of how her mother used to watch thunderstorms from the porch, as if every rumble carried a secret. The more she talked, the less afraid she became, not because the situation grew safer, but because she could feel something between them shift. A crack forming in the barrier of alienness. One night, if it could be called night in deep space, she asked it, "Do you have a name?" The drone hesitated. "We do not use names. We are facets, memories, functions. But that's not who you are." "That's what you are." Another pause. "You may call me they." Mara smiled, small and tired. "They, that's nice. It sounds soft." "It is not our word. It is a resonance, a harmonic." We liked how it felt when you said it. They, a name born not of speech, but of shared silence. Later, as they floated near the observation deck, Mara drinking lukewarm tea, Vey standing beside her like a sentinel made of night, she asked, "Why now? Why come back after all these centuries?" They shifted. "Because some among us believe peace was a mistake. That silence is surrender. That your kind has only hidden your nature, not changed it. And you? I do not know," Vey said. "But I wanted to see you, not your cities, not your fleets. Just one of you." Emotion caught in Mara's throat like a fist. She remembered documentaries of the first contact wars, where humans saw aliens as threats and the stars as battlegrounds. But Vey wasn't a threat. Vey was a question. A mirror. "Do you feel anything?" she asked, careful not to make it sound like a challenge. "We do not feel as you do, but we remember feeling. And when you speak of your brother, your oceans, your loneliness, I feel something, like echoes of echoes." Mara turned to look at him. At it. At whatever intelligence waited beneath that dark armor and starlight-bending skin. Maybe that's all empathy is, just echoes we let ourselves remember. For a moment, they stood completely still. Then the light inside its core pulsed gently once. A heartbeat. An answer, that night, as Mara fell asleep in the observation. Cherished she dreamed not of warships or crumbling stars, but of two children, one human, one alien sitting on a roan moon, and watching Earth rise together. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. When she woke, the drone had draped a heat blanket over her. She stared at it, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. "You stayed," she whispered. "I am learning," they replied. Not how to judge, but how to understand. And with those few words, Mara knew something profound had changed. Not in the galaxy, not yet. But in them, Dot and her, they were enemies. They were proof that even across 1,000 years of silence and fear, understanding could still take root like a seed in scorched soil. And sometimes that was all it took. Asterisk, asterisk, the moment came quietly, as most truths do not in thunder or flame, but in the spaces between words, when trust has worn a path wide enough for secrets to step through. Mara sat cross-legged in the central hub, surrounded by holocharts and motionless terminals, sipping instant tea that had long since lost its flavor. Across from her stood Vey, the drone body now moving with such human grace it unsettled her at times. It blinked less now, paused more, as if learning to think aloud rather than simply calculate. "Tell me," she said, gently but firmly. "Why are they really coming?" They didn't answer at first. Its fingers flexed, unnatural but hesitant, like someone testing the edge of a knife. "Because they believe your peace was built on our graves." The words sank like stones in her gut. "What do you mean?" she whispered, the air growing colder, though the temperature hadn't changed. Vey stepped forward, slow and deliberate, its voice lower now, less robotic and more like wind passing through hollow bones. "You know the war ended. What you do not know is how. Your records show victory through retreat, through exhaustion, through treaties. But those are only shadows of the truth." Mara leaned forward, her breath caught. "Then tell me the truth." "We surrendered," they said, "not because you defeated us, but because you chose to stop killing." A cold stillness crept through the room. Even the systems hummed more softly, as if listening. Our kind had vast fleets. Our logic was sharp. We fought not for territory, but for what we believed was order, predictability. You were chaos. You fractured logic. You broke patterns with emotion. We did not understand you. We feared what we could not contain. And so you tried to destroy us, Mara said, voice tight. Vey nodded. We burned your colonies. We shattered your moons. We erased names from your maps. And then, when the retaliation came, we prepared for extinction. But it did not come. Mara's voice cracked. Because we stopped. You stopped, Vey echoed. You offered aid. You repaired our damaged ships. You buried our dead alongside yours. You reached out your hand when it was covered in your own blood. That broke something. The silence afterward was thick with weight of memory, of grief too old for the tongue. And that's why some of you left, Mara guessed. Why you vanished into the dark. To understand, they said. To evolve beyond vengeance. But not all agreed. Some believed the war had been paused, not ended, that your mercy was simply a long trap, so we fractured. Some of us went deeper into silence. Others waited, quietly, building their anger like stone walls. And now they're back, she whispered. They nodded. Yes, they see your silence as mockery. Your growth as conquest. Your laughter as defiance. Mara's heart beat faster. So they're cunning to restart the war. They call it cleansing, Vey said, a bitter tremor in its synthetic tone. They believe this time you must not be forgiven. She stood now, heat rising in her chest like a scream she couldn't let out. But we didn't do anything. We've spent 1,000 years trying to heal. And that is why I am here, Vey said. To witness, to plead, to remind them. But my voice is one among 100,000. Mara turned toward the window, stars blurring through tears. You said you wanted to understand. But did you? Do you really see who we are now? I see more than I did, Vey said. I see your fragility, your kindness, your rage. I see your willingness to die for strangers, and your refusal to let go of love. I see your contradictions. And that is why I fear they will not believe me. She faced him then, fire behind her eyes. Then let me help. Let me talk to them. Let me show them. They will not listen, they said. They do not trust your voice. Then take me with you, she said, stepping forward, her hands clenched into fists. Let them see what mercy looks like when it bleeds. Let them hear our stories. Let them watch a human grieve. They don't need to see a warrior. They need to see a heart. They went silent for a long time. Then slowly, it reached out and placed a hand over hers. Cold, light, steady. You would go before the tribunal of the forgotten? If it means peace, she said. If it means one child gets to live without fearing the sky. And in that moment, something ancient and unseen shifted not in the station, but in the stars themselves. A path opened. A decision was made. Mara had become more than a technician. She had become a voice in the storm. The journey began in silence, as all solemn things do. Vey's ship, or what Mara could perceive of it, was less a vessel and more a phenomenon, a sphere of flowing black glass that folded around them like memory. There were no windows, no controls, no engines. Only gravity that whispered and corridors that rearranged themselves as if responding to thought. Mara wasn't sure if they were moving through space or space was moving around them. All she knew was that she was farther from Earth than any human had ever been, and her heartbeat was the only sound that reminded her she was still real. She expected to be brought to a throne room, or a war chamber, or something shaped by hate. But what awaited her was a garden, not green, not lush. The ghost garden. Shadows of what could be, projected from memories not her own, trees with transparent leaves, flowers that bloomed into stars and closed into fog. A quiet place, impossibly large, floating in the middle of nowhere. And there, among the illusions, stood the tribunal. They were not like they were tall, some twice her height, and shaped in ways that defied symmetry, as though biology had given up halfway through designing them. No eyes, but Mara could feel their scrutiny like cold hands on her bones. No mouths, but she heard them voices laced with steel and sorrow inside her head. You are the voice of the species that burned our skies. Her knees weakened under the weight of the accusation, but she didn't fall. She took a step forward. I'm the voice of the ones who rebuilt your cities. The ones who sent medicine to your colonies after the ceasefire. I'm not here to argue history. I'm here to offer a present. A pause, long, uncomfortable. You offer mercy in exchange for survival? Is that not conquest by another name? Whereas, fists clenched, mercy isn't conquest, it's the opposite. It's knowing you have power and choosing not to use it. We remember your power, another voice said, colder. And we remember how quickly it turned to ash. She stepped forward again. And you should remember who stopped the war, not generals. Not politicians, nurses, farmers, survivors who refused to hate. People who buried your dead next to theirs and whispered apologies to graves with no names. That silenced them briefly. But then the shadows shifted. One figure moved closer. Vay stepped between them, but Mara raised her hand. No, let them see me. The figure spoke not through thought, but aloud in a voice made of splinters. You wear no armor. You carry no weapon. What makes you think you can stand before? U.S. Mara took a breath, because I've lost two. My brother died on Mars when the atmosphere processor failed. I couldn't save him. But I remember how the neighbor who hated us for our faith brought oxygen tanks when ours ran out. He saved my mother's life. That's the kind of story your people never got to see. The tribunal fell into deep, humming silence. The kind that felt like the sky itself was listening. Then came the twist. One of the tribunal, a being wrapped in shifting metal and molten light, stepped forward. We know your kind has changed, but not all your kind agrees. While you stand here, fleets prepare. Missiles sleep in orbital cradles. Your piece is cracking. Mara's stomach dropped. What are you saying? There are elements within. Your governments that received our signal, they have chosen not to answer. They believe this is an opportunity. They prepare for war. She felt like the floor had fallen away. It's not possible. Earth would never. Earth is not. One voice, Vay said quietly. It never was. Rage surged in her chest, not at the tribunal. At her own people. The thought that some might see this fragile moment, not as a bridge, but as a battlefield, made her tremble. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. And yet it was real. Then let me speak to them, she said. Let me tell Earth what I've seen, what I felt. If they don't believe you, they might believe me. They will not let you return, one whispered. Then send the message, she replied, eyes wet. Send it with my face, my voice. Let them see the truth. A long silence followed. Then Vay stepped forward and knelt before the tribunal. I will deliver her, if she is silenced. It will be proof that they are not ready. The tribunal's lights dimmed, considering. Then they spoke in unison. One chance. One voice, one thread of peace in the storm. And with that, Mara knew what she had become, not a soldier. Not a diplomat. A fuse. And the world would either light it or extinguish everything she'd risked. Asterisk, asterisk, they didn't send her back in a ship. They sent her in light. They stood beside her as the tribunal dissolved into silence, as if folding themselves back into memory. One of them, maybe the oldest, maybe just the most tired, touched Mara's temple with fingers that felt like liquid. Fire. She felt her thoughts split, expand, stretch across a bridge that had no name. The next moment, she was standing in the heart of Earth's most secure orbit, in a shell of bending light and shimmering silence, tethered to Vay's ship by a thread of unknown physics. Around her, defense satellites swiveled and charged. Warships loomed. AI targeting systems pinned warnings. Humanity had heard the tribunal's arrival, and it had answered with teeth. This is your species' first response to fear, Vay said, his voice quiet but sharp. Weapons before words. Mara stared at the armada, disbelief twisting inside her like a knife. These ships bore flags from every corner of Earth nations that once waged war against each. Other now stood united under the banner of defense. But she could see it in the movements, the patterns, the subtle tightening of orbit. They were not here to negotiate. They were here to strike. Her comlink crackled to life. Old tech, made obsolete a generation ago, suddenly resurrected by the tribunal signal. The voice was sharp, commanding. This is Admiral Reese of Earth Defense. Unidentified human, you are trespassing in a secure vector. State your identity and surrender control. Mara took a breath that felt too heavy. This is Technician Mara Lin, formerly of Eidolon Station. I have returned under the protection of the tribunal envoy. I am not a threat. I carry a message. There was a pause. Then laughter, not amused, not cruel, just tired. You? The mechanic girl from the gravity relay. You have no authority to speak for us. I'm not trying to speak for you, she said, heart pounding. I'm speaking to you. Listen to me. But already the targeting systems had turned. Mara could see the first wave of kinetic lances charging. Bright blue coils of plasma hummed, ready to pierce the alien ship behind her, the one that housed the tribunal's memories. Their fragile trust, they will fire, they said. No, Mara whispered. Not yet, they still remember. She pressed a command into the platform and override using her old maintenance codes, and with a surge of raw data, she linked her neural feed directly into the orbital relay network. She bypassed military channels. She accessed the civilian nets. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the entire Earth saw what she saw. The projection went live. Her face appeared above cities, inside homes, on personal comms. No script. No media filter. Just one woman in the void standing between war and memory. My name is Marlin. I'm a nobody. I wasn't trained for this. I didn't study diplomacy. I fix things that break in the night. And maybe that's why I'm the right one to say this. She looked into the feed as if it could look back. The tribunal came because they feared us. Because they remember the wars we don't talk about. They watched us build peace and didn't know if it was real. They needed to see our heart not. Our weapons. She glanced back at Vey, then to the targeting reticles that still hovered. Trembling, we showed them mercy 1,000 years ago. Not because we were weak, because we were tired of blood. And now, you're about to undo that gift with a single command. I beg you, don't let fear make that choice for you. Admiral Reese's voice returned, thinner now. You don't understand. The risk. I do, Mara said, quietly. I stood in a room where judgment waited, and I held their gaze without armor. I saw their sorrow. I saw what they could do. And I saw what stopped them wasn't force. It was kindness, grace. Second pause. A countdown began in her HUD. The fleet had locked on. 10 seconds to impact. Mara's heart thundered, but her voice did not waver. If we fire now, they will retaliate. Not out of anger, but confirmation. We'll prove we are still the monsters they feared. But if we choose to wait, just wait then. Maybe we show them we are more. 5 seconds. Vey placed a hand on her shoulder. You did all you could. She shook her head. Not yet. And in the last second, she said only this. I believe in us. Please prove me right. Then dash silence. The reticles blinked. The countdown stopped. No shot was fired. All across the fleet. Targeting systems disengaged. Lights dimmed. 1,000 triggers never pulled. The silence that followed was not tense. It was reverent. Then a new voice echoed through the channel. This is Captain Alora Kim of the Tannen, standing down. We will not be the spark. One by one, the other ships followed. Weapon systems powered down. Earth had chosen. Mara collapsed to her knees on the platform, trembling, sobbing quietly, not from fear, but from the release of 1,000 years of tension carried in her bones. You did it, they said. No. She whispered. We did. Above them, Earth turned slowly in its cradle of light, still flawed, still wounded, but alive. And willing. Once again to listen. The sky did not break. The missiles never flew. No ships burned. And in the silence that followed, something ancient began to unravel, something colder than war, older than memory. It was fear. The kind passed down through generations like scar, tissue, fear of the other, of annihilation, of repeating the mistakes that had once turned stars into tombs. But that fear didn't vanish all at once. It faded slowly, like darkness giving way to a hesitant dawn. And Mara, still just a woman from a maintenance station, with trembling hands and exhausted eyes, became the axis around which history turned. She stayed in orbit for days, floating in that translucent cradle of alien light, her message still echoing across the world below. People argued, debated, protested, but no one fired. That was what mattered. There were speeches and emergency summits and faces that tried to claim her moment as strategy or luck. But none of them had been in that garden of ghosts. None of them had seen the tribunal look at a human and choose to wait. When Earth finally responded, it was not through warships or policy briefings. It was through a ship, a single one, painted white, stripped of weapons, sent into the void not as a challenge, but as a reply. And Mara was on board. Vey too, though, he wore a different form now. Not a drone, but something new, still alien, still impossible. But softer around the edges, like he'd learned the shape of comfort. They visited moons first, small ones. Places long abandoned during the expansion era. Sites of old battles, where dust still held pieces of shattered memory. Mara watched as the tribunal's envoys returned to those places, not to accuse, but to remember. Together, they built cairns of light and metal, monuments that hummed with both sorrow and healing. Not graves, gardens, one day on a desert rock. That once held a weapons factory, a child approached her. Not human, not fully alien, a hybrid. The result of experiments or a piece she didn't know. The child touched her hand and asked, Are you the one who stopped the war? Mara smiled through her tears. No, I'm the one who asked them not to start it again. The child thought about that. Then offered her a flower reel, living, bright blue and impossible in that soil. They said you cried for both sides, the child said. That's why they believed you. She took the flower gently, her fingers trembling. I cried because I saw myself in them. In all of us. And I didn't want to live in a world where understanding was a weakness. Years passed. Not quickly. But steadily, tribunals met with humans, not often. Not easily, but the lines of silence began to fray. Stories were traded. Names remembered. No peace was ever signed. No treaty etched in stone. Because the peace didn't live in documents. It lived in acts. A pilot disobeying orders to fire. A technician offering her life to speak a truth. Child handing a flower to a stranger with shaking hands. That was enough. Mara never returned to Earth in any official way. Her home was between stars now. Her title, if she had one, was never written. But she became legend. The laughing ambassador, some called her named after the strange, broken message the aliens had first broadcast. You laughed at our silence, she had laughed, not in cruelty, but in wonder. Because when death had come knocking, she had chosen to speak, and the galaxy had listened. In her final years, she wrote letters not to governments, but to future generations. She told them to love boldly, to fear wisely, and to never ever let silence replace curiosity. When she died peacefully, surrounded by both human and alien friends, her body was not buried. It was released into the void, wrapped in light, cradled by stars. And somewhere, far from Earth, a garden bloomed on a barren world. No names. No flags, just a plaque that read, "Here lies a voice, not the loudest, but the first to be heard." And long after the ships were gone, and the stories grew old, and the names faded, the stars remembered her, and they never burned the same way again.